Thank you all for attending this evening's distinguished AI speaker that Nittany AI Alliances is graciously hosting, together with the other AI centers at Penn State, including the Center for AI and ML to Industry, AMI, and the AI Hub. My name is Greta Kellogg. I'm a former Penn State student, grad student, lifetime alum, and first-generation Hispanic American. I am with Penn State's AMI Center as the Assistant Director, and tonight we are going to hear a talk from an amazing individual, Samantha Wheeler. Our hope for tonight is that you, our Penn State students and researchers, will be inspired and realize that you too can get involved with artificial intelligence's projected impact on our local and global ecosystems. Ask any of us at Nittany AI Alliance or the other PSU artificial intelligence centers about your desires for your career goals and how we can help you. So Sam is the Director of Alliances for AI at Vast Data. Her personal career pathway is unconventional, and she will be sharing those challenges and her journey with us tonight. Sam will be speaking to us from her experience within the technology industry itself, both as a woman in a technical role and as a business development leader navigating a hyper-growth market. As the Director of Alliances for AI at Vast Data, Sam works to expand market awareness of the Vast Data platform within the AI industry through strategic technological alliances, including NVIDIA. Previously, she spent 7 years as a technical sales engineer at an HPC AI systems integrator, Microway, after a career transition away from the restaurant industry. She received her associate in arts in psychology from Cape Cod Community College after suffering a traumatic brain injury during her freshman year at Drew University. And it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce you to Sam Wheeler.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's funny because pretty much the reason why I'm here is Greta, because we happened to join a Zoom call early one day together and just started talking and chit-chatting, and I must have had too much coffee and started rambling. And a few months later, we had this discussion about this potential speaking opportunity. And I couldn't thank you enough, and Andy and all of the student groups and honestly, the Penn State Alliance teams and industry programs here are just incredible. I'm continually impressed by what I've experienced today. And honestly, for the last 8 years, I've had probably 8 years, I've had the wonderful experience of engaging with researchers at Penn State through just individual opportunities of architecting a workstation for whatever they needed to do or something here and there. But this is my first time on campus, and you guys have been so overwhelmingly supportive and welcoming, and I just want to thank you for that today. And hopefully I'll be back in the near future. But I did want to share my story. Now, I'm going to start kind of in a chronological order because it's important to understand where I came from in order to really feel empowered by the direction where you're taking your own careers. I started off my freshman year at Drew University. I was a really incredible lacrosse player, and you learn to know me well enough, you know that I don't generally make statements about my capabilities at all. I don't boast, and I'm pretty much an anxiety-riddled human being, so self-doubt right here. So for me to say that, it was my first love. I picked up a stick and I never wanted to put it down. It was something that I thought I was going to make a career out of, truly. Within a year and a half, I actually worked for a lacrosse company at 18. And so my freshman year, I made the mistake of catching a ball with my face instead of my stick. And I had a traumatic brain injury. I had 7 concussions in 2.5 years. And this was prior to the NFL admitting that there was even a concussion problem. It was prior to the larger medical community acknowledging that concussion research was needed. It was really prior to any real supportive care being integrated into pediatric care, right? And I was barely out of my pediatrician's office at that time. It was November 14th, and I didn't get the care that I needed until June 2006, so 6 whole months later. And the consequences of that is I went from being a star athlete, a high-performing student. I had 2 jobs. I was a writer in the newspaper, and all of a sudden I couldn't read. I couldn't do simple math. I took AP Calculus, and I couldn't do simple math, right? I couldn't navigate the world around me. I was effectively hallucinating for 9 months. And I had a medical team of doctors tell me I was fine. And so I found myself in this position where I didn't have anybody except my mother supporting me, because my mom knew, oh, there's something wrong here, right? So all of that is kind of to set the stage where I went from a really high performing individual to what do I do now, right? And you lose a lot of confidence, and then you have to build yourself back up. And I am a lot of things, but I am not a quitter, right? And I think that sports, although ultimately led to my injuries, also gave me the groundwork to let me move forward and move past this. And I think, thankfully, it also led me to the restaurant industry, weirdly enough. So in order to pay for my rehab programs, I had to also earn a living, right? So that's how I got into the restaurant. I applied as a hostess because I had never done anything. And then I also didn't have the confidence to go into anything real. I was like, okay, I'll take something where I can just say hello to people. But I had all of this experience coaching people and, coordinating plays. They put me in the kitchen. I was like, are you sure? No way. And I went from, they put me in kind of an expediter position, and 3 months later, I moved around. I learned how to cook over here, learned how to cook over there. And within 9 months, I was a manager of the restaurant. And before I was 21, old enough to drink, I was a bar manager. It was great. And so I worked for Brinker International, which is the restaurant company that owned Chili's, Macaroni Grill over the border during the recession, right? The 2008 recession. And so all of these properties started closing, but I had this knack for optimization, right? System optimization. And so they used to call me the ninja. So they would send me into these places, tell them to turn it around and get out and go to the other place. It's fun, but taxing. So had enough of that, found my way to Panera Bread. Was like, all right, I can do this. Had a little extra time, no alcohol involved, no drunk people to deal with. It was great, right? So with Panera, it was a really great opportunity for me because I lived in an area where their entire executive team just happened to live, Massachusetts. So they used that entire demographic and that entire region as a test bed for a market test. They said, how much money can we funnel in to a particular area and sustain quality, sustain talent development, and not burn out our people, and sustain basically talent retention. So We opened 17 cafes in 2.5 years. I worked there for 3.5. We also tested what is now their online delivery platform, their online user interface. It was the next wave and basically the first time that a quick casual restaurant was testing this out and deploying it in production workloads to the field. And I was the ninja, the operations manager, and also the training and development person that oversaw that region. And so I was sent to go manage this project from the guise of making sure that everything just worked. It's great time, let me tell you. But going through that process, I had built up a lot of skills and again, kind of drawing on what I knew about coordinating plays, managing people, pulling on this don't quit attitude. Let me tell you, there is nothing more stressful than managing change with a lot of people who don't like change. And in that project, you also had to change the customer behavior, which I don't know if you noticed, but customers don't really like change. When's the last time you walked into your favorite insert whatever local shop and they moved a trash barrel and you were like, ah, right? It's just an inconvenience because you have to think about it all of a sudden. So that was just my career path. At the same time, I was also dealing with a lot of the cognitive effects, the long-term cognitive effects. So there's this whole career path, but then I'm still dealing with persistent migraines that last for days, right? And these migraines are they're not your typical kind, right? They knock you out. They're disorienting. I have this, I get tinnitus, which is ringing in your ears, but I get it so bad that I lose balance, right? And it's stark. It just will happen all of a sudden. I actually can't enter a data center without serious ear protection because it will send me in a tailspin. I also have really, really bad, sometimes if I'm overtired, I have trouble with word recall, which is a problem, especially now. I mean, a little bit of a problem when you're supposed to be a kind of a subject matter expert, right? Mixing up words isn't great. But it's something I have to deal with, and really learning to navigate how to present yourself in a reasonable fashion and earn that respect, especially having a kind of a skyrocket career too. I went from having no confidence to all of these people saying, well, you can do this. Sure, just go do it. And sure, I could do it, but there was also no guarantee that I could do it at that moment, right? There was always this thing in the back of my head where I could fail at any time because I didn't have control over that. I really don't. I mean, even in this moment, I still don't have control over whether or not I could drop right now and just and the talk could end. But that's an experience that I have to deal with, and honestly, an experience that you all would live with and experience and understand and maybe walk away with compassion, right? And that is enough. And so while I'm going through this, I'm also still attending classes. So although I have an associate's degree, I continued to go to UMass Boston. I took classes online. At this rate, I probably have enough credits to have a master's degree. I just don't have the accreditation. I studied mostly neuroscience and psychology because I needed to in order to understand the underlying mechanisms of how my brain worked in order to try and fix for myself and understand how to address the problems and the cognitive differences in my abilities. Because you can't fix something until you understand how it broke, right? So in doing so, I inadvertently set myself up to understand neural networks later on. Weirdest way to set yourself up for a career, not recommending it, just to be clear. But by the time I was done with Panera, I had already kind of come to the solution or the conclusion that I didn't need to get my degree because it had no bearing on, I didn't need to get my bachelor's because it had no bearing on how I earned money. Oops, sorry, covered my microphone, apologies. It had no bearing on how I earned money at the time. And it was costing me time and money. I was working like 80, 90 hours a week. It was insane. And I was traveling. Like let's just be very clear. I was not sleeping. Like it was a thankless industry, and I love my Panera teammates because they're still some of my biggest supporters. Some of them are logged in to the remote Zoom right now, and some former Penn State alum, right? And so I had decided I'm out. Oh, Siri. I had decided I am out. I'm ready to go. That's it. And this is where really networking and what I saw today throughout the course of my day, which thank you very much, Greta. I saw the way that everyone here networked and the way the interdisciplinary teams come together to really drive projects. And AI for good is not really, it's not a catchphrase here, right? It's a mandate is what I'm feeling. And I can't explain to you the value of networking and how that will impact your careers and your lives. And I urge you to do that in every scenario. You never know who you're talking to. Never. My first day at VAST, I got into the elevator in the New York office with the chairman of our board. He's a billionaire. He was a former president of NetApp. And I just was like, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 right? I have no idea who this guy is. And I'm like, hey, have a great day. Meet him a few hours later. I'm like, oh, hi, right? But the point is that at Panera, by the time I was ready to leave, I didn't realize that the two people that have been coming into my hometown cafe for 5 years or however long, I'm telling them that I'm leaving. They're looking for a person to replace someone in an administrative position. And they said, hey, do you know anybody? I said, yes, me. You gotta be kidding, right? They know I'm way overqualified for this because I've talked to it's a husband and wife team. I've spoken to the husband. He came in for breakfast every day for like 1.5 years, quiet time. He's a physicist. And I'm like, yes, please, let's talk. And the wife would come in for lunch every day. And, you just get to know people. And people are fascinating beings. And they'll always show their best side if you let them. And so they were like, all right, come over, meet the rest of the team. We know you, but they have to agree, right? So I go over, I'm like, she calls me the next day, oh, come over now. I'm like, I'm out, I'm in my flip-flops and a tank top. So I run to the nearest store and buy what I need and run right over. And And I spent 7.5 years there. And everything I know in my career, I owe to a small team of people willing to teach me everything they know. Because I asked. I was willing to engage. I had this desire to just absorb everything that they could possibly tell me. It's funny because I'm here with with your wonderful NVIDIA representative, John Coyne, and his colleague on his team, Elliot Eshelman, was our sales VP at Microway. And I remember sitting down with, there were two salespeople. It was Brett Newman, who is now Microway's VP of marketing, and Elliot Eshelman in my first interview. And we sat in there for 2 hours and I told them about all my experience. They were like, "You're gonna be here for an administrative position?" Okay, sure, great. I automated myself out of a job, basically, right? And then I just started to learn. I asked a lot of questions and we continued from there. And I started to engage with researchers like at Penn. And it was an incredible time to learn. But again, I still had to navigate this nagging experience of, I'm not good enough. Now I have the added layer of, I don't have a degree. I never went back. I don't have the credibility, right? Now and I'm still dealing with this word recall. And I still have difficulty reading sometimes. But now I've surrounded myself with a team of people who consistently reminded me that I'm not alone. I don't have to do it alone. And as much as I might feel like I own my own mistakes, that nothing gets done alone. And I need to lean on them in order to just make sure when I don't feel ready, or make sure if I'm not feeling 100%, that they'll be there to catch me. And as someone who is always kind of go, 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 and I grew up in an all-military family, and you had to be ready all the time. And it was a very uncomfortable place to be, to all of a sudden have to need people, right? I wasn't used to that. And they never let me down. And it was a freeing experience, actually. So the best part about Microway actually is because they were so small and nimble, and because this husband and wife team, they started the company early in the 80s, before HPC was cool, right? HPC is high performance computing, if anybody doesn't know. And because they started this company so early, they had really great industry relationships with a lot of the chip manufacturers. So Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, and the projects we worked on were first to market products. So these were researchers that were doing something for the very first time. And we were building a computing system that, with a motherboard that was literally not deployed anywhere else in the world yet. And they were gonna do the tests for it, right? And we were gonna make sure it ran. And we were always in these fun and often chaotic small projects, and then we would bring larger systems to market, right? So, but my specialty was working in accelerated computing and specifically with NVIDIA. And it happened to coincide with this time period that Jeff Hinton released the 2012 paper, right? I joined in 2014 with Microway, and NVIDIA started to just completely, what's the term, glow up, right? And so I got to learn about AI along with all of these HPC like industry people who have been doing research computing forever. But I had this added layer of knowledge about the brain, and I just learned fresh about system architecture and system design, right? So now I became, weirdly enough, almost an expert to my team, and I could communicate and I could communicate to them in a way that made sense and bridged a knowledge gap. And so we got to learn together about AI in real time with NVIDIA, right? And we got to work on really cool projects. And when I say we worked with the researchers, I mean, our method of building systems wasn't just, oh, tell me what you need. It was us reading papers, what they wrote before, reading their research to date, and then saying, okay, how are you going to augment your code from here? And what does that look like? And let's talk about what the parameters are going to look like and what you would need, what's available on the market today that could actually meet that, right? And so that's how it's a very consultative process. And it allowed us this understanding and real look into what they were doing. So throughout my career, I got to really know and understand NVIDIA and AI. And there was this one project that just kind of shifted my perspective. And I think everybody understands that, like, that aha moment that really solidifies why you're doing something, right? It says, this is why I'm here. This is what brought me here. There was a project that I was working with a gentleman. He now leads the healthcare team at NVIDIA. His name's Rory Kelleher. And he's a great human being based up in Boston. I'm from Massachusetts. And we were working with the Harvard Medical School and the Martinos Neuroimaging Center. Now, they were writing a grant for basically updating their infrastructure to support the next generation of AI-enabled MRI capabilities. And the core researcher wrote FreeSurfer, which is the open source code for MRI. And super cool dude, great person. And Rory and I did on-site presentations together, all this stuff. We worked really closely. And the really great part about this is that the doctor in June of 2006 that I saw that absolutely changed the course of my rehab runs his research through their infrastructure. Dr. Mel Glenn out of Spalding Rehab Center directly benefits from the project that I worked on. And it became very personal to me, right? So I was like, I'm gonna put every ounce of effort that I can into this. And that was the goal, right? And it wasn't about, like, I worked for a salesperson. It was a sale, right? But it wasn't about the sale. It was about the technology. It was about the project. It was about the outcome. And that was the moment where everything changed. And I looked at every piece of research and every technology just a little bit differently. And it didn't matter if I was an expert in something anymore. It mattered what my intention was behind and my motivation was. It mattered how I could impact the larger community. It wasn't about whether I could code this or that, right? It was about how I could bring my skill set to the table in the best way possible. And develop that and hone it that would benefit the larger community. So ultimately, this is how I landed at VAST. VAST data came out of stealth right then, right around that time. I was asked to quote VAST as part of the bundle, and I said, no way, absolutely not. I don't believe they can do what they say they can do. And I lost that deal. I worked on it for a couple of years. I lost that deal. And I watched them like a hawk from afar. And they released a software update. And I was like, well, hot damn, they are doing it. And I tell that story openly because I think that technology is in the proof and the adoption. But here's the big reason, is that I think that AI, particularly, and technology, the promise of technology is to enhance human lives, right? Technology is supposed to work for human beings, not the other way around, right? That is the promise of it. Currently, I don't really see a lot of that. And so I know we're all a slave to our cell phones, but I do think that we can get there. And so with VAST, I saw a man who, when I first met him, was managing an infrastructure that was so complex and so difficult. And when I say, like, I joke about, when I get carded, I'm like, oh, what? I have too much life in my eyes, I really felt for this person because he was a one-man infrastructure administration team managing something so important and imperative to so many people, personally myself, right? And I saw the direct impact on his quality of life improve because not only did the technology work for the scientific applications, it just worked for him. It just worked. And he didn't have to deal with the headaches. He could focus on other things and better support the research community. And it made a massive impact. And that was the day I was like, I signed them up as a partner. I joined them a year later. And so those are the kinds of relationships and the three-dimensional thinking I challenge you to look at how you navigate your careers. And in terms of market impact, if you want to take your passion and turn it into a money earning avenue, you can do that. No one is stopping you, right? I would say that I am envious of every person in this room. You have the opportunity in the network that I never had. I wanted this so bad, and it was cut off. Every student here has a gift. You have, we always, my friends and I, we have this joke about like, check your privilege, right? Because, everybody has a certain amount of privilege. right? And I think it's important to understand that in every circumstance, you have a different amount of privilege, better or worse, right? You have this really, really great gift. You have brilliant minds that are a touch away. All you have to do is ask, right? All you have to do is ask the question, who do I need to talk to? Right? Send an email. And if you don't get a response, send it again. Who cares? Right? Be bold. Trust me. I am nothing if not persistent. And it's okay to get shot down. Right? Just keep moving forward. There's so much ahead of you in your lives. And that goes for every person here. I don't care how old you are. There's so much life ahead of you, and you only have one of them. And particularly with AI, we're at the dawn of the era. The tools are now in place, and the ability to use those tools is only going to get easier. There's a massive effort to reduce the level of effort to code right now. Large language models will basically bring the ability to build applications to the layman. Your job as whatever your core function is, because there's a lot of different disciplines in this room right now. Your job is to understand how you can interact with the ecosystem. You don't have to know how to build the tools. Your job is to know how to use it appropriately within your discipline. And also how to impact it, right? From a data perspective, data is one of the biggest challenges right now. It is the challenge of our era. I think compute layer is a continuous problem, but they're hand in hand, right? Data's unruly at the moment, and it's only going to grow. Right now, what we have are challenges around ethics, governance, observability, availability, utility. There are so many aspects that need passionate human beings involved from every aspect of law. We are way behind the curve on ethics, from my personal opinion. And I know that we started years ago with really sound and really great ethics committees, right? And we had really great minds at the forefront of architecting some of these paths forward. And somehow they got lost. And now that AI, and especially with ChatGPT, now that this is kind of I think Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he said this is the iPhone moment. ChatGPT is the iPhone moment for AI. It brings AI into the hands of everyone, right? It is the first iteration of the iPhone. Consider that, right? There's only one direction to go from here. And we need so many people involved across many disciplines. We have a brilliant artist in the room. Yes, brilliant artist in the room. There is so much power in visualization, and a lot of visualization techniques are being enabled by AI. And I think, one aspect of this is that I continuously get questions on is it going to replace my job? All of these tools are going to continually enable you to build your skill sets. they're going to continually enable you to round out your capabilities. And so for me, when I lost a lot of confidence and capability, I would have loved to have existed for this moment to be the moment that I had when I struggled, right? There's so much potential and so much potential in this room. I mean, I don't think I could overstate that enough, or I don't think I could overstate that. And I want to be cognizant of time because I'm time blind also, but I want to open up a little for questions. I'm a little early on it, but I think we have really, really smart people in the room. So I know I'm going to get some good questions. And actually, I'm going to challenge the NITNI students to ask some questions that we talked about earlier. And maybe challenge me to elaborate on anything that we may have discussed. Yeah, go ahead.
This traces back to a conversation we had earlier about like how to build credibility coming from a background that doesn't necessarily give you the qualification that, oh, I don't have a tech degree, but you know the skills, you understand it, and you definitely want to work in the same field, but how do you prove it to people? Just by building your resume, not just like activities or like certifications, but like what other methods would you recommend?
So networking is a huge thing. A lot of life is knowing people. I hate to say it like that, but it's true. But also having confidence in your skill set and the way that you speak about your skill set is a huge portion of how people perceive you. Whenever I walk into a room, nobody questions whether or not whether I deserve to be there, right? It was funny. I met a person who wrote quantum computing code, and he asked me where I got my PhD, and I laughed. I laughed out loud. I may have spit my drink a little, and it was funny, but we had a really great conversation about it. And he was like, I don't care. And that's the truth of it. Most people don't actually care. They care more about competence than anything else. If you have the knowledge and you have the skill set, there are a lot of artificial barriers put up. And you just have to realize that they're artificial first, and then have the confidence to just kick it down. Yeah.
Hi, I am in awe of you, by the way. So I really,
please.
so I know you mentioned, having so many challenges due to the consequences of concussion, and being in the field, I'm sure you would have come across areas where accessibility was certainly a challenge. How do you foresee that changing with things like large language models, and like, is there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, accessibility champion to your whatever that is, left or right.
So this is something that I started to learn about
Like,
recently as well. So I'm always curious to see like what are the experts at the forefront of these technologies thinking about when thinking of accessibility.
yeah. So accessibility is a wide term, right? There's accessibility from a disability standpoint, but there's also socioeconomic accessibility. And so there are a number of corporations and even startups addressing AI at the edge for education. There's a number of startups addressing accessibility from feature adoption within software. We had a good discussion about, I did not realize until I enabled the dyslexic font in Kindle that was going to help me. Awesome, great. I was 35. So anyway, I foresee large language models to be incredibly powerful, not only for accessibility for a number of just the general scope of disabilities as we classify them today, but also for a lot of the misunderstood and mischaracterized or rare diseases, and how we treat those, because healthcare research is obviously a passion of mine. And so differential diagnostics is very difficult for practitioners. And because we're discovering more and more, it's very difficult to keep up. And these kinds of tools are going to be the only way for us to be able to treat people at the level of care that they deserve, right? So across the spectrum, I think AI and large language models particularly are going to be just the key that unlocks the door to the future. Great question.
Hi.
Hey.
I guess my first question, the short one, is you mentioned a Jeff Hinton paper from 2012. I was wondering if you remembered which one that was.
I'm gonna be honest, it's been a long day. I can definitely make it available to Andy.
Awesome, no worries. And sorry, the second question. I read something yesterday, a quote that was, the choosing, that's all we have. And since you've worked on a diversity of topics, it seems like in a world, especially overwhelming with options, I was wondering how you've chosen to narrow down and select the things that you've liked most to work on.
Nope. Honestly, I will say that I haven't really had the luxury of much choice in my life. Or maybe that's just an illusion that I tell myself. I'm gonna be honest. I am pretty much a person that just barrels forward, and happens to work out sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. I fully believe that if you put good in the world, it comes back to you. And that's what I'm experiencing. And I tend to lead with my core beliefs, and I align myself with people, and I align myself to people, and particularly in technology, I align myself to people and also companies that operate with values that I agree with, because, and I'll get a little beyond the scope for a second. I do not particularly enjoy the current state of the world. I do not currently enjoy the particular state of capitalist economies and what it's doing to the larger populations. And I believe that some of the very small decisions that are made at the top of companies every day impact the larger swath of people that are suffering in great mass today, right? And so I align myself with technology companies personally that are impacting the world for good. And so if I continue to do that, I can sleep at night. So that is the best answer I can provide you there.
Is it okay if I go ahead first? Yeah, sorry. As someone who has functioned based off of passion, motivation, and well, just determination. That's you. How, if you were to choose between, let's say, creativity and skill, like if you were supposed to give a ratio between hard skills and soft skills, what would that be? To like maybe be the, not necessarily like an entrepreneur, but let's say a good manager, like a successful person in life in general. Like doesn't have to be in a specific role. But which one would you give more priority to?
Honestly, so never undervalue soft skills. Never. I find that the people that undervalue soft skills have the hardest time pushing the value of their hard skills forward. And they also, I will also say that the ratio changes depending on time of life, the scenario you're currently in. You know, I think there's a term kind of going around right now called monk mode, right? I don't know if you've heard it. It's kind of like hide away for a couple months, do your thing, or whatever the time period is, do your thing, and then come back out to society. You know, all of life, I think this is how I perceive the world. Don't, you know, quote me or whatever, but all biological systems have the same fundamental operating systems. They have cadences, they have seasons. You're the same way. You have a circadian rhythm, right? Your career will be the same way. Your personal life will be the same way. The solar system is the same way, right? That will also apply to how your skill sets support you throughout your life. So I would say build them up, value both of them, and then apply them as you need them.
So I was just wondering, how do you, so from our conversation this morning, you were very humble. In the beginning of this, you were very humble. And I just wanted to ask, like, how do you find yourself rising the ranks at every single place you've been while also, you know, maintaining a very humble personality?
I say yes to opportunities that are put in front of me. I don't necessarily seek them out. Because at the end of the day, I just want to do a good job and go home kind of deal, right? Like, for me, it really is about when I show up to work, I want to make sure that the people around me benefit from my existence. You know, I've always kind of had that team mentality. And so honestly, I don't know. I don't know. And also because I've lost so much, right? Like I don't take much for granted. You know, even at Vast, right? I'm in the position that I am today. And if I'm not there tomorrow, I'm going to appreciate every moment that I've had, you know, and if if they want to keep me, I'm going to stay and appreciate every more moment they give me, right? Every additional moment I have on this earth, I want to positively impact the people around me. And in any capacity, whether that's someone walking past me on the street, or if it's someone on a Zoom call, or if it's everyone in this room. If my existence means just making someone's day, that's all I need, right? But if it means a little more, awesome.
So you were just mentioning like how you want to be a positive impact for the people working around you. But I kind of want to flip the question and say, well, in return, what do you expect out of the people who you work with? So if you were to create like a dream team of people you wanted to work with in terms of values and traits that you value, what would you do?
Honestly, I have it. I really do. So all right, so I don't say this lightly. I joined VAST and I signed my offer letter. Signed my offer letter in November, and I just needed a few weeks between leaving jobs. My mother had passed, a few months prior, and it was, let's just say, I've had a good solid run of a chaotic 5 years behind me, right? So it's prime time in life. So I just needed the end of the year, and I was like, all right, just need a few weeks off. He said, no problem. But we're having our team summit in New York. It's like our holiday summit. It's the second week of December. If you could just make it out even one day just to meet the team, please come out. And my boss, John Mao, he's our VP of Global Business Development and Alliances. He's just a phenomenal human being. I mean, I can't describe to you enough how lucky I am. I went from working with Elliot to John, and they're both just so giving with their knowledge, and they're so, they honestly just really take care of me in ways that that I personally appreciate. Like I'm not gonna make the equation, but it's just ways that I appreciate that go above and beyond what I would expect, right? And so he teaches me, because I've never done this particular role before, he teaches me as much as he can. And also he is a silently brilliant human being, right? Like he's also a very humble person. And then we directly report up to our chief marketing officer, Jeff Denworth. And Jeff is an interesting character. And I say character because he's very funny, he's very charismatic, he's also very brilliant. And he's probably one of the smartest people I have ever had and may ever have the opportunity to work with. And I take that very seriously. I don't take that lightly. And every opportunity I have to engage with him is something I value. And then with the extended team, just VAST in general, just incredible. So I said yes. I go to New York. I spend 5 minutes in the room, and I was like, oh, these are my people. I had made the right choice. And then 3 months later, I got to look at kind of the larger vision, and I was like, this is exactly the company I knew it was going to be. And I never looked back. So both from a technology standpoint, from how they operate in a business standpoint, and cultural values, and also just the people and the talent and the way that we all operate, and as an agile team, it's just really, it's an incredibly special organization doing, I think, something unprecedented. So.
Okay, so this may be odd, so I apologize in advance if this doesn't pertain to anybody else in the room. But much like yourself, I am also somebody that is very into just absorbing knowledge and information as much as I can on a daily basis to learn new things. But on the other hand, I also was an athlete just like yourself that endured the same physical trauma. So I do sometimes find myself not being able to retain a lot of the information that I learn in a day. So what would you recommend that I do that could help me retain that information?
Yeah, great question. And also, I appreciate you very much. It takes a lot does take a lot. And it takes time. It took me 7 years to feel normal-ish again. granted, I don't know the severity comparison here. But the best things that you can do are know when to rest, stay hydrated. I know it sounds ridiculous, but stay hydrated, meditate. Mind-body connection is, so if you meditate for like 15 minutes, break it up into 5-minute sessions, 3 times a day, it'll help your brain reset. And diaphragmatic breathing will help your vagus nerve system reset itself, which will also help a lot of the nerves inside within here reset, which directly impact your facial nerves, your trigeminal nerve, your ocular nerves. So that will all directly impact your ability to retain information you read. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your life experience. And as another,
The opportunity.
as a human being, I really appreciate what you have given today to the audience. And as the director of AME, I want to thank you for accepting our invitation and coming here and spending this time. I have a very difficult question to ask.
Okay.
You talked about networking, right? I do understand that networking is important.
Mhm.
However, if there is a majority group for whom the minority is invisible, these people have no chance to be a part of that network. Okay, so that's very common. Okay. And I have seen this here as well as in many other places. As a result of that, because of the networking, mediocrity raises to the top. So what is your advice to younger people who are invisible to this majority and not being able to even network?
So I won't lie, everybody has a starting point in the race. And some people their starting point is way back there. And it's a major problem. And that's kind of goes back to the check your privilege conversation. And it starts by having conversations exactly like that and having difficult conversations. I personally, like me as an individual, I always engage and try to encourage these types of discussions whenever I am present, because I come from I grew up in a very white, predominantly rich area, right? But I traveled the entire country and saw and was exposed to very diverse areas. I have friends from all walks of life and from all over the world. The restaurant industry, I employed a lot of people from very low socioeconomic circumstances. And so I feel very strongly about topics like this. And so I had discussions with some of the leadership here about programs in order to enhance the opportunities for students like that to network, to encourage some basically paths into industry a little bit easier, to make things a little bit easier. Now, I'm not saying it's an overnight solution, but there are programs available, and a lot of it's just knowing where to look, right? There's always networking opportunities that you can just show up. Sometimes it's about getting outside of your comfort zone and knowing that and trusting that you have the right to exist in that space, right? But I understand what you're talking about, where these kind of elite clubs exist, where people get pulled up through back channels, right? I didn't have access to that, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And to be clear, if there are conversations with our industry partners for how we can better promote all of our students and all of our student populations from
Yeah.
any number of disciplines and from any number of walks of life, that is something that we absolutely should follow up on.
Yeah, no, that was part of like a larger conversation, by the way, just to be transparent.
Thank you for your talk.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I don't have any background in anything AI, but it was really interesting to hear your perspective through the industry. I have a question about your career path.
Yeah.
So you had several jobs throughout your career, and I was just wondering, at what particular point do you decide it's time to move on to a new job? Like, I mean, even just going from Panera and moving on, was it just like you said, the opportunity came to you and you took it, or were you kind of already looking?
It is burnout. You know, I will say that I am not always the best at recognizing when to say no. That is a skill that I recommend you develop. And that goes back to what should you learn to focus on and how choices, right? Understanding your own limitations is something that does not come naturally to me. I think everyone in this room can agree at this point. I also like to just experience things, and so I just said yes to basically whatever came at me, and I just hit a point where I hit a wall. And you know, at my last company, I think it was more about I wanted to shift into the technology space instead of the role that I was in. You know, so it was, I wanted to work for the technology company, and you know, as much as I loved, it was like, all right, I got 2 companies, and I really loved Fast because it was solving the biggest problem I saw in front of me that the people that I cared about, the researchers, were dealing with. And I still got to work directly with NVIDIA. So it was like the best possible solution in front of me. Yeah. Cool.
So we have 2 questions in chat, but one's really quick. Ashlyn Wheeler has asked, I'm assuming this is for everyone as well, have you hydrated today?
That is my wife. And yes, thank you.
And then the other question, actually, Corey Wheeler?
Who?
Corey.
Oh, Corey. So Corey Wheeler is not related to me, by the way.
Okay, I got
Just to be clear.
confused for a second. Okay. Networking is important. How do you go about building your professional network, and what advice do you have for building a professional network?
All right, so a couple things I would like to point out about Mr. Corey Wheeler is that Corey Wheeler is a solution architect for NVIDIA, by the way. And he is a Penn State student right now in the MBA program. And he is a brilliant man, and also lives all the way in LA. And he and I happened to be assigned to a project I was working on, and we had the same last name, and I was like, we have to meet. And he is just like the best possible human being. So I just had to put that out there. But so establishing a professional network, again, goes back to the basics. You know, you really have to, I do a lot of research on people, right? I love people. People are interesting. I think that as much as the science is interesting, the people behind it are more interesting. Because what motivates people to spend all of their time doing this? Like, you know, you gotta really, really enjoy something or be motivated to do that in order to spend all of your time focused on that one thing. I don't really have a ton of focus, right? So I really spent a lot of time understanding, what do I need to accomplish? What are they doing? Is there any interesting reason why we should meet? And also, what do I bring? What do I offer this person, right? I don't want to just waste someone's time, but is there an interesting aspect to our engagement, right? So for students, while you're here, you ask every question that you have. That is your job, right? You pay tuition, that's your job. When you get out into the professional networking, into your professional careers, now it's more of an exchange, right? So you now have to network where you exchange, you have to exchange in some kind of way, whether it's a business proposal or another connection or some manner of speaking. And sometimes it's just an interesting conversation, right? Because sometimes other people just enjoy having a conversation with other people where there's no pretense. And there's a lot of pretense in some professional networking settings. And I think it's nice when you get to break those down. So that's my best advice, is break down that pretense.
Yeah, thank you. It's was a very inspiring story, and I have questions for almost every stages of your career. And I study infectious diseases, and I'm also very excited about the possibility of AI and healthcare and that sort of intersection. But if I can ask one question, I would ask about uncertainty, because it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty in each step of your career and your life. So what does uncertainty mean to you, and do you always have a backup plan? Thank you.
Do you know me? Okay, so a little bit of context for this is that, so although I lost a lot of cognitive function and faculty after the injury, I did not lose my core personality, which was to always be prepared, because I grew up with two older brothers who loved to torture me as a child. And so I grew up with a lot of uncertainty anytime I turned around a corner. And I say that jokingly, but no, I grew up with a very large family. My mom was one of 12. I have 52 cousins on one side, and my dad was one of 9, and I have 30 some odd on the other side. So there's an aspect of a large family, especially I was the youngest sibling, where you always had to have an escape route of any given situation. And I say this because I always have to have some level of a backup plan. And so because of that, I always have basically a core skill set that I know that I can apply to any given situation. But as you get older in life, you also get more confident in applying that. And so the interdisciplinary aspect that I kind of challenge you guys on is really taking your core skill sets, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and applying it to another discipline, and just kind of having faith in yourself, because it'll work out, because it's life, right? Somehow it all works out, right? And you have a lot of support around you, right? And if you don't, ask. And for me personally, because I worked in a restaurant, because I had to pick myself up from the ground multiple times in my life. I am not afraid of hard work, right? I just rebuilt a house, right? Where I learned most of it from reading books, magazines, YouTube, right? I like to learn. I love learning everything I can possibly get my hands on. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Who? All right. So I love to learn. And so there are always transferable skills, right? So just apply them, right? It's all about practical application. I think you can do it. First vote of confidence. There you go. Yeah.
Previously when we were walking and talking, we talked about like issues where like implicit bias might come up in these AI programs. And when you were listing the problems you see in the future, governance was kind of one of them. How much do you think like responsibilities we have, and like how far should we go into trying to make sure these AI and machine learning algorithms kind of like don't go straight out like wrong paths or get used in like wrong ways in that kind of regard?
So remember that software, right? Software and, and data, just like a hammer and a nail, are tools. They can be used with malintent, just like any other tool. And so you need to, as human beings that are stewards of utilizing and developing these tool sets, it is your job and responsibility to take care and to go as far as you can to protect the intention of these tools. I think that it is, again, it is the collection of small decisions every single day that make the largest impact. If you build something that is from the ground up, built with intention to be ethically, and to be fair, right? These are evolving times, right? Not all of the techniques, not all of the techniques, tools, libraries, these don't necessarily exist, right? These are evolving conversations. And so as it evolves, stay updated, apply the techniques, but get involved in the conversations. If there are committees, join them. If there are open discussions, join them, right? I mean, but also don't get overwhelmed. There's so much information out there. But if there's something within your space that you're involved in, absolutely get involved. But if it's on your periphery and you just happen to hear about it, it's not like, you don't have to be everything. Be great at what you do and put all of your effort into being the best at that, right? And then interact with the people around you and offer your support and your guidance and your perspective. That's all you can do, but do it with good intent.
I would like to thank Sam for speaking with us tonight.
Yep.